This presentation has been designed to support you in working with your son as he prepares to make some subject selections for the first time in his schooling career to date. So at this point in Year 8, boys are now getting ready to select subjects, of which they will select 2 elective subjects for Semester 2 of Year 8. They will also have opportunities to select subjects in both semesters in Year 9 as well. Your son has heard this information, and this exact presentation was used at school this week to present to your son. With you now having access to the same information, it puts you both on the same page to have some conversations. I will point to the email address on the screen. The Senior Pathways email is a one-stop shop email. While I will introduce you to a range of support mechanisms throughout this presentation, should you have a question and not know who to direct it to, the Senior Pathways at padua.qld.edu.au email will be the mechanism that you can email, and your email will be directed to the most appropriate person to answer your question. At this point, it's appropriate to refocus back on the learning framework, and certainly the Padua College learning framework sits with the good men of Padua and what our aspirations for the good men of Padua are at the centre. But certainly this process, the idea of allowing boys to have elective choices in Year 8, is around this idea of them becoming resilient learners and certainly self-directed and self-efficacious learners. We want boys who start to tailor their pathways, and certainly start to tailor their pathways so that they can get to a point where when we get into Year 9 and the end of Year 9 making decisions around Year 10, that they've had an opportunity to try some subjects. They've had an opportunity to find out what subjects they really enjoy, what they're good at, and what they're interested in, because we know that the best future senior pathway sits around subjects that will support what their post-school goals are, but will also sit around subjects that they enjoy, that they're good at, that they've had some success in, and that they're interested in. We have 3 phases of learning at Padua College, and certainly in the becoming phase, in the middle phase, that is about them becoming good young men of Padua. So in the junior phase, they've settled in as belonging within our community. In the becoming phase, they now are becoming those good young men, those men who, as I mentioned before, are self-directed, take ownership of their learning, take agency of their learning, and are working towards those ideals of what a good man of Padua is, so that as we get into the senior phase, they then have an opportunity in the being phase where they are actually consolidating all of that and working towards the aspiration of what we hope a good man of Padua is when they leave the college. And without reading this verbatim, there's very specific platform to what we are aiming to achieve and how we want to support your sons in the becoming phase at Padua College. And certainly we're supporting them through developing their own sense of belonging, their own sense of being, and subject selection, and starting to tailor their own pathway certainly is part of that process. And it's a really good opportunity to also think beyond just Semester 2 Year 8 or Semester 1 and 2 Year 9. So we have subject selections in second semester in Year 8, and we have subject selections in both Semester 1 and Semester 2 of Year 9. And at the end of Year 9, they'll start to select subjects that look like their 3-year senior pathway. So we have 6 core subjects and 2 electives in Years 8 and 9 from this point on. We then have only 3 core subjects and then 4 electives in Year 10, 2 core subjects and 4 electives in Years 11 and 12. And I'll unpack what those 6 core subjects are in a later slide, and also what the elective opportunities are. I'll also show you how our subject offerings extend in each phase, so you can see the really clear alignment from grade 5 to grade 12, how the different subjects extend and expand, providing more options as your son moves through the grades. A really important piece of information and supporting material to support this process is the subject selection handbook. Currently, the subject selection handbook for Semester 2 is sitting right now in Teaching and Learning, in the Teaching and Learning tile, in the subject selection tile. Now, this booklet is outlines, it's 20 pages. It outlines information that you need to know about all of the subjects. It has descriptions of all of the subjects. It will talk about assessment. It also gives an overview of the kinds of information that I will cover in this presentation as well. So it really is a one-stop shop. This was made available in week 1 of this term, and certainly your son has been shown this week where that is available on My Padua. So both you and your son have access to it in the teaching and learning tile under subject selections. I mentioned before that there was a document that was coming up that would show you how all of our subjects progress and develop and extend as your son moves through the years. And this document here is taken directly from the subject selection handbook, and this document appears in every upcoming subject selection handbook, whether that be year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11 or year 12. So certainly showing you how some subjects link through to other subjects. As we move into senior though, it's important to know the different codes. So A stands for applied, so that's a non-ATAR subject. General stands for, G stands for general or ATAR subject. Cert is a certificate subject. Usually that sits with a non-ATAR pathway. And there's a school-based subject, and we run Catholic studies, which we run as our school-based subject, and that's our senior religion subject in year 11 and year 12. And now we're at the point where we get to work, and you get to work with your son around making some really exciting choices, really starting to select those electives so that their engagement is peaked, that they're really sitting in interest areas. As we get into year 10, boys actually will, for example, take senior subjects and start to split their sciences and start to further hone their subjects. But this process now is about boys starting to select 2 elective subjects, semester 2 year 8, semester 1 year 9, and semester 2 in year 9. And my recommendation to the boys is always experiment. So sitting in the same 2 subjects for a year and a half doesn't actually help them to determine what subjects best suit them, what subjects are of interest to them. Our subjects are designed in such a way that boys can take different subjects across those 3 semesters. We really want them to have a really good idea of what subjects work for them, so that when they get ready to make subject selections for year 10 and they move to 4 electives, that they've really got a good idea. So that's certainly the way the subject selections work in the next year and a half. And while I have been talking about the future view, now let's talk specifically about semester 2, year 8. So we can now see the 6 core subjects, and we sit in the 6 core subjects of religious education, English, mathematics, science, health and physical education, and HAS, humanities and social sciences. The electives then are digital technologies and industrial technologies, and design and music, business, drama, Japanese art, and we have a maths science extension subject that is for semester 2 only, and that is semester 2 only in year 8 and semester 2 only in year 9. That's a subject that has prerequisites, and what we say is boys should have a minimum of, out of 3 subjects, maths, science and English, a minimum of 2 A's and a B. Where the 2 A's and the B comes from is neither here nor there, but that's what we say, because while it is an extension subject, it's a project-based extension subject. So they're applying quite high-level concepts into practical applications, and certainly those are the skills that they would need in order to be successful in those subjects. So boys get to select 2 electives out of the electives list. You'll notice that where we used to have business and digital technologies together, they've been separated into discrete subjects. Where we used to have design and industrial technology, they've been separated into 2 discrete subjects. And certainly boys who might have tried something in semester 1 or semester 2 of year 7, they get now to get back into some of the other electives they might have really liked, whether that be music, drama, art, business or Japanese. And we also have that the math science extension subject for boys who are sitting in that space and want to start to apply some high level concepts as well. As a general guide, and I've already mentioned this, but as an overall plan, we sort of say, look, he needs to be looking at subjects that he enjoys, or that he's interested in, that he's had some success in, and that will, potentially keep some career options open. But right now, that's not a worry about us. It's the experience now is for students to actually try different subjects. So we talk about them as being tasters. We also, I want to make it really clear that Year 8 Semester 2 electives are not meant to be future focused in terms of study. So if you want to do art in the future, you don't necessarily have to do art now. We do have a couple of recommendations that we'll talk about later, and certainly music and Japanese. They're two subjects that if you're thinking of taking beyond, we'd expect you to be taking them certainly in Year 9 and Year 10, but it's not important or it's not imperative that you do it all the way through Year 8, Year 9 into Year 10. So I'll talk through that a little bit further. So these are not linked to prerequisites for senior, but developmental subjects like Japanese and music, there's certainly some recommendations and some requirements in those. And this is a concept I've already spoken to, but certainly these electives in Year 8 and into Year 9, Semester 1 and Semester 2, are tasters. They're designed to allow students to experiment, to experience a number of subjects so that they really know what works for them and what doesn't. You know, we don't want to limit them at this point. So sitting in the same electives for a year and a half, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't help them when they go get ready to make selections for Year 10, where they're carrying 4 electives. So this is now a time for them to start to build up their understanding of subjects and how they interact with subjects as well. And I've already mentioned that these subjects are not geared to prerequisites at this stage. Okay, there are some exceptions, and that's music and Japanese that I'll talk to, but certainly not at this stage. As self-directed learners, there's actually some work that students need to do, and it's really important that they're finding out as much information as possible, that they are looking through the subject selection handbook and guided by you in that process, that they're talking to learning area leaders, that they're talking to subject teachers if they want to find information. And we'll provide an opportunity for them to access learning area leaders at week 6. They can look at textbooks and resources, they can talk to other students. So there's certainly some work for them in terms of being self-directed learners and really being engaged in the subject selection process and finding out information. Now, there's always reasons that boys select subjects that they probably shouldn't. And so, for example, your son's an individual, so selecting a subject based on the teacher or their friends are taking it, or we think the teacher will be this, because we can never guarantee who the teachers will be. So based on personality of the teacher, based on the fact that other boys are taking it or their mates are taking it, the conversation I had with your son this week is that they are individuals and they need to take subjects that they are interested in and that they believe they can have some success in. And it's really important. Because these are semester-long subjects, we ask boys to choose wisely. We do not change subjects mid-semester because they will change again for Year 9 Semester 1 and then again for Year 9 Semester 2. So a student coming and saying, look, I want to change because it's not what I thought it would be. Well, there's information in the subject selection booklet, and there's access to learning area leaders, and we'll provide a formal opportunity for that at week 6. So certainly there's a requirement for the boys to be taking some agency and some ownership in that process, and certainly being supported and guided by you in this process as well. This is actually a really important point to make really clear, and we've made this clear to the boys. Their performance in Year 9 and Year 10 may affect their subject choice in Years 11 and 12. So, for example, if we're looking at Year 10 Prep Maths, if you're sitting on a C in Year 9 for Maths, then that's not the subject for Prep Maths method, that's not the subject we would suggest. So we would be saying, to get into Maths methods in Year 10, we would be saying a minimum of C+ in Year 9, but really a B-. The same applies for some science subjects. If we've got boys sitting on a C in science in Year 8 and Year 9, are we going to be setting them up for success if we put them into chemistry or physics in Year 10 for their prep subject and then into Year 11 and 12? And the reality is, the answer to that is no. So everything that we do and the decisions we make as a school is about supporting your son and setting them up for success. So certainly it's important to know that there will be some links to their performance in Years 8 and 9 and in Year 10 that may have impacts on whether they meet prerequisites moving forward, whether that be going into Year 10 or going into Year 11 and 12 in certain subjects. So there are a list of some fairly important dates here, beginning with the release of this video. I know at the beginning of this video I've spoken about how students will have been presented this information already. In fact, we'll be doing that next week, so that students will have this information presented to them, and that'll then facilitate conversations going through to when subject selections are due, when they'll get their email, and their email around subject selections comes from, not from Mr. Pacey or Mr. Stour or Mr. Emlyn Jones, it comes from no reply at selectmysubjects.com.au, and if boys keep that email, they can make changes right up until the closing point. We'll have an opportunity in the week on Wednesday the 25th of May, where learning area leaders will be available in La Cordelle at lunchtime to be available for students to ask questions. And they'll be communicated around that. And the online subject selections are due by Friday the 27th of May. Now, there is a process where we want a signed copy delivered to the Teaching and Learning Office. It's okay if that comes in the following week, but the online selection must be done by the 27th of May. And then we start to crunch the selections, and then from there we start to put class allocations and put boys into classes. Now, just some other points to note. Because we are lining up elective subjects, that will facilitate change of core classes. So while not all core classes and teachers will change for some students, that is the natural outcome of lining up the elective subjects. So I just wanted to make that really clear. I've already made that clear to your sons when I met with them this week. Subject allocation is not based on a first in, first served basis. So just because you get your email, your subject selection online done early, doesn't mean you're guaranteed those subjects. It's really important that the boys actually put their preferences down in the order that they would want them, so the first and the second. Now, the next point's about reserve choices. It's really important that we have reserves, and we have 2 reserves. So there'll be 2 electives and 2 reserves. The reason they're important is going into Year 8 Semester 2, it's highly, highly, highly unlikely that any boy would need to use a reserve. Having said that, as we move on, and particularly as we go from Year 9 and Year 10, the likelihood increases. And in fact, boys going from Year 9 to 10, there will be boys who will use reserves. So we really want boys to be considering their reserves now. And it's probably good to think about, well, I've got 3 semesters of 2 electives, so I've got 6 electives. What are the ones I really want to do now? What are the ones I'm thinking of doing next semester? So that that's a really good way to think of your reserves, so that you're sort of getting that all front-ended and all sorted. And this PowerPoint as a video, this will be all uploaded, so you've got access to this with the PowerPoint. Now, as I said in the previous slide, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides. There's about 10 of them, but I'll give you some really important information. So you'll see that it's come from no reply at selectmysubjects.com.au. Sometimes boys will go, I heard Mr. Pacey talking about that, so they'll look for my name, but it comes from that email address. The big thing to look at is the really big click here to open web preferences. There is a smaller, down below where it says or log into. If you log into that, it prompts you for those student access code and a password. If you're prompted for a student access code or a password, you're in the wrong place. If you click on the really big purple click here to open web preferences link, your son will be taken directly into his subject selection online process. So there's no need to add in password or username or anything like that. So if you're prompted for an access code or a password, then he's clicked on the wrong link. And then really it's about, if we have a look across the top in blue, you'll see those arrows. They're not active links. That's just telling you where you are along the process. What you want to look for is you want to look for the green buttons, and the green buttons is by clicking on those, that's what moves you through the process. You'll also see that there's instructions at the top, and by clicking on the view instructions, you'll open the full instructions, or you can close them down. So opening those and working through those with your son, if he's not sure, is a really good idea to help support him in this process. You'll see there that's the full instructions when we've clicked on it, and then you'll see the green button down below for proceed. And then it's a matter of going through. Now, for the core subjects, you don't get a choice. So when you click on religion, there's only one option. When you choose English, there's only one option. Same with math. When you click on that, there's only one option. Science, geography, HPE, only one option. It's now when we get down to the electives that we're going to start to see the options, and you'll see there's preference 7, but put your preferences in the order you want them, and then your reserves. And as I said in the previous slide, it's a really good idea to think, well, what are the electives I want to try over the 3-semester period? And that way, if you did end up with a reserve, you would get one that you're planning to do anyway. And now you can see when we do the drop down, you can see all of those electives that are listed are all there, and you select the one that you want as that preference. And here you'll see it completed with 2 reserves that I've considered doing, and you'll see that the green proceed button comes up right there, and click on that to take you through. Then you'll get to this screen. Now this screen, boys often screenshot this, or print this out, and then they'll sign. This is not, there's no place there for a signature. This is not complete. You'll notice there's still a green submit valid preferences button. This is just you having a look before you hit the final process. Now, your son will get up to 30 times to enter these. So if he changes his mind or makes a mistake, or he does something and has a conversation with you, he can go in online and change that. However, if he submitted a signed receipt, then he would need to do a new receipt and get that signed again if he has changed his subjects. And so we've got the receipt there, and it says print that and have that signed in. So now we're actually getting into the final receipt. And that's the spot where both the student and the parent will sign. Now, just in terms of supporting your son, it's really important to know that boys really at this stage in year 8, they should be working towards an hour of homework 5 times a week. And as they get into 9 and into 10, it should be an hour and a half. So really 5 hours a week at this stage in year 8 is about right for homework. If your son's not doing that sort of time, then it's a conversation around what his study routine looks like. In terms of key sources of information, there will be information that comes through in the bulletin, in emails, but certainly My Padua, that subject selection tile, will have the information that you need. And that includes the year 8 and for next year, the year 9 subject selection handbook. The Senior Pathways email is also really important. That's that one-stop shop if you need information, and the most appropriate person to answer that will have that email directed to them. Now we're just getting into some names for our learning area leaders, and certainly some email addresses should you need to make contact. If you've got questions, don't forget that Senior Pathways at Padua email address, and your question will be directed to the person most suited to answering it. Look, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Certainly if we do a face-to-face, it sits more at around an hour to 45 minutes. So we've certainly changed the process to make it staged and much more accessible to students and to parents, and also to make the video a much more digestible format. Thank you.